You're listening to Learning How to Live, the podcast about what happens after you wake up from the life you were told to want. I'm Quinn Stainfield-Bruce, and 6 years ago my best attempt at life had failed. Now I'm learning how to rebuild work, love, health, and self-worth, and I'm inviting you to learn alongside me. Let's get into it. All right. Welcome, dear listener, viewer. It is an unbelievable privilege to be here with you today with Rosa Maxwell, who is the founder, leader of London School of Tantra, who I had the absolute privilege to meet through my fiance, who met you through other circles. And I actually had the opportunity to be in 2 of your workshops at the end of last year and was so moved, so profoundly impacted by it. I had to create the space for you and I to discuss Tantra and how it could impact life on a wider level. So welcome, Rosa.
Thank you, Quinn. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm going to start with some vulnerability, because that's sort of what I do. I have no filter. There's no shame, no filter. I don't know. My fiance Osha, who is, a real embodiment of the divine feminine,
Yeah.
very, very in tune with her body and very in tune with her soul. And she's been a coach for 12 years, working with women in all sorts of different capacities. Very kind, very peaceful, very serene. I am 7 years in recovery from drug addiction. I am very masculine, tuning into my divine masculine, for all of these things. But I have been on a journey of recovery, of recovering the true masculine, the true Quinn. And, in Osha and my relationship, I have had to learn about, I think, sex, not to jump straight into that side of things, but I've had to learn about my body. I've had to learn about what sex really is, what love is rather than lust, lust being a selfish desire for sex. Nothing wrong with lust on its own. It can be destructive, which I have experienced. So learning about love, learning about intimacy, learning really what sex and a healthy relationship is all about has been a journey for me, and I'm happy to say and proud to say that Osha and I, we have a deeply trusting and safe relationship that allows for everything to be explored. But one of the things that we've been working on together over the last, I guess, few years, Osha and I, and this is something I know people in general struggle with, particularly men, is presence, presence in the bedroom. And I can, I can tell you that at best, men are generally, at very best, maybe 2 or 3 seconds in the future rather than present in the moment, right? On the whole, most of the time, men maybe even a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes out of the present moment, thinking, what do I do next? How do I do this next thing? How am I going to be received? How am I going to perform? And that's not even an unhealthy perspective for men. There can be men who are very selfish and not thinking at all. But I strive for presence in
Yeah.
everything I do. Right. And so an Osha has been guiding me to be more and more present, right? To be able to sit with myself and my feelings and everything else. And the world of intimacy is no different now in my experience. And so we reached this point halfway through last year where we were sort of looping, because I wanted to be present. Osha wanted me to be present. I just don't know how to do it. And I said, maybe we need to go and do a course. Maybe I need to go and experience real Tantra. And she goes, I know a woman. And I think she, I mean, I think she wrote to you, I don't think she did write to you actually. I think she actually just went onto the London School of Tantra website and booked us into this course. We didn't really know what specifically it was about. And but we were both, I was just like, yes, let's go for it. And I'll tell you, it was life changing in ways that I could never have predicted, which is always the best way. And I'll come on to it
Mm,
later, sort of my experiences. Um, but that's how I met you. And that's how, I started being able to work under your stewardship. So, you know, I have a very, yeah, I'd like, my opening question to you anyway is about how you ended up into this
yeah.
in Tantra. But why don't you just take as much time as you want to introduce yourself and your discovery and perhaps even where you came from?
Love this. Thanks, Quinn. And such beautiful vulnerability. And I love, I love witnessing your relationship and like really, really like with Asha and how beautiful it is that you're navigating these spaces together and always like with that openness to learn and explore. And I'm excited to talk about your experience a little later on in the workshops because it's amazing at how simple a lot of this is, but how wildly transformational it is. And I think where I want to start is a little bit of like just to ground us in the context of tantra and like what that kind of really like means, because I'm sure so many people will hear the word and be like, what the F is that? Isn't that this thing that's like all about sex that like Sting would do, to have 10-hour long lovemaking sessions? And yes, that is possible. Yes, like we can have multi-orgasmic experiences. Yes, we can reach wild states of ecstasy that feel, I mean, one of the reasons that people would explore those type of practices in Tantra is to meet more of like the divine or God or whatever word that we want to use for that. But truly the heart of Tantra and the way that I love to think about it and that we talk about it at the London School of Tantra is simply that every single thing gets to be a pathway for your enlightenment and to experience like more of the divine. And when I say the divine, like what I really mean is, for me, it's this sense of like awe and wonder and magic at this mystical universe that we find ourselves in. It's this sense of really seeing ourselves and each other in a space of like that awe and wonder. And really, when I say every single thing gets to be a pathway to that, all that means is just that, but it includes sex, it includes love, it includes relationships, it includes getting on the tube in London, it includes doing our taxes, it includes work. Like it includes the whole freaking workforce and businesses that we find ourselves within. And it's why I think it's something very important for every single CEO to explore is this tantric path. And I know that we'll get into that a little later on. But truly, 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 Tantra is that every single thing gets to be a pathway to our enlightenment if we choose it. And so for me, it is one of the fastest paths to our liberation, to our freedom, to our experience of wholeness. And because the way that I see what Tantra does and like what you're even alluding to in this space of presence is we're really stripping away all of the things, all of the narratives, all of the shame, all of the conditioning, all of the repression, everything that is not ourselves, so that we can just be fully ourselves. So all of that maybe overthinking or like, what am I going to do next? All of those pieces, they get to really be stripped away. So you just come back to the body, back to the self. And it's like, it's like an exhale. Is literally what it feels like is an exhale. It's like, oh, wow. So it's really for me, this like pathway of life. Yeah.
How does that differ to meditation to the uninitiated?
Yeah, beautiful question. So, I mean, in Tantra, in like classical Tantra, it's a lot of meditation. There is a lot of meditation in that, but the way that we teach and where the neo-tantric movement, and I really would say that we're at the forefront of this wave of modern Tantra, which is really how we bring this ancient philosophy, these tools, these methodologies into our modern day lives. But where meditation is often a process of inward facing and sitting in silence and really feeling, and in classical tantra you would use mantras. You'd use mantra-based meditation to really, again, like do some of that stripping to meet more of yourself, like all of those things. And it's very, very powerful. But where this like neo tantra then kind of brought it, and where we really take it today in this new movement, is that actually tantra is everywhere, everything, all the time. So it's not just reserved for being solo in our meditation practice, within ourselves. Actually, it's about how we interact with others, how we interact with the world. So it's not just refined to like behind closed doors. It's really about how we live. And so that's the way that I see it really, really differ. And meditation is one tool in this whole path, in this whole philosophy. So meditation is a part of it, but the real heart of it is how we live and how we experience the world.
If it's not too premature,
Mm.
could you give me like an example or an anecdote of tantra applying to everyday life?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, the way I like to think of it is, for example, I mean, the tube is such a great example. Like for those of us Londoners, so often we can get on the tube and, there's lots of people. It's like really like it's intense. It's intense. And we can feel in the body being like this. It's like contracts. It's like, oh my God, I don't want to be here. Oh my God, that person smells. Oh my God. Like there's all this like, oh, oh, I'm thinking about, I'm going to be late for work, or I'm thinking about, it's all like, ah. And so when we bring in Tantra, what we get to embody, and at the London School of Tantra, we teach 12 fundamentals of the human experience that we explore through a tantric lens. And these are the fundamentals that without which we stay stuck in shame, conditioning, repression, kind of misery is like where I'd see it, like just an unfulfilled, unlived life. But when we gain mastery of these fundamentals, then we really get to experience that freedom and liberation. So if I think about me being on the tube, oof, I would be like, okay, if I'm uninitiated, if I'm not living in this way, I'm like letting all of this impact me. I can feel myself, sinking. I can feel myself getting maybe annoyed. But if I start to lean into the fundamental of surrender, and if I start to lean into maybe even the fundamental of play or love, then it completely changes my experience. And so then I'm on the tube. Okay, I can't change the fact that it's crammed. How about I just surrender to that? Okay, my shoulders relax. I breathe into that. Let me feel into that surrender that's always exists in my body, that I can always tap into. And then let me just play with it. Like, wouldn't it be fun if we make, like, if we make this a game? Like, wouldn't it be fun if we, like, I don't know, bring play into the experience? And then wouldn't it be fun if I start to just open my eyes and open my heart and look, and I do this on the tube, and sometimes I get really emotional. Because what I do is I sit on the tube and I look around at all the people, and I just feel my heart, and I feel this like feeling of literal like unconditional love in my body. And I look around and I'm just like looking at all these people who have their own lives, who are doing their own things and their own, like, and they're like the mothers, and there are maybe there's a homeless man, it's all of the facets of the human experience exist in one tube carriage. The lovers that are over there. Oh my God, I've got chills. But the lovers that are over there, and we start to just open ourselves up to like this, like, wow, the human experience is so beautiful and connection is so beautiful. And you'll be amazed at how many people I end up just having a little chat to, and how many people you see smile. And so it just changes. And what I want to say with that is it changes our experience, because if you're wandering around the world in this closed space, contracted space, nervous system dysregulated space, then it's impossible to amplify the big visions that you have. It's impossible to like really like be living in this world in fulfillment and satisfaction and joy and bliss. And so, but when we can do this like in our every single day, and particularly in the work context as well, when I think about it, but is like, creative, it's like we can vision, we're more creative, we have more, like, I call them downloads, other people might call them just ideas, but it changes everything. And it's those simple, it's finding, people would say like finding God or finding the divine in these minute spaces. When you do that in the micro spaces, it changes your whole life. And so that's why it's like really this path of life.
What you just described so beautifully is how I define spirituality
Yeah.
to the uninitiated. That is, in its simplest form, the paradigm shift that I am not the center of the universe, but a part of it.
Hmm.
That shift, where you just reframe how you interact with the world, is the crack in the door that opens up spirituality, which is to go from self-centeredness, to to selflessness. And I think about it with work, and it's a nice little segue into our work thing. And we're still very much in flow, actually, on our little itinerary of questions. It's great. Work, the world of work. I'm going to be really grandiose for a second, right? The world of work is built over the last 150 years on self-centeredness.
Yeah.
Without self-centeredness, you cannot have that instinct of greed, of more, of survival, of lack, of I need to win over other people losing. Because really, at the top of that pyramid is shareholder returns,
Mm.
right? That can only come really from, or historically, from people just having to selfishly get more, climb higher. There has to be losers. So business for a long time has kept people in this place of don't feel, don't connect, don't. Emotion is not a place. There's no place for emotion at work, because if you start having feelings at work, if they were allowed, well, then suddenly you're going to start empathizing. Suddenly you're going to start caring. Suddenly, like you said, you're going to start noticing other human beings with their own families and their own hopes and dreams and goals, right? Not these people that really you're in competition with in order to generate more, to be more successful. And so this need today, because this system is clearly not working with the massive low engagement going on, and burnout and alcoholism
Yeah.
figures, and just general, like 91% of people in the UK want to quit their job. That was
Yeah.
the recent Gallup stat. Imagine where you spend 80% of your time and 91% of people don't want to be there. I mean, that's not okay. The layoffs in January from multinational organizations was the biggest since 2009, post that 2008 crash. Like, it's not okay out there. So whatever the system has been isn't really working. So the opportunity to bring in consciousness, because I would also describe your tube analogy as consciousness, right? Waking up from this sort of self-centered, self-imposed prison of suffering, of self-centeredness, waking up to realizing actually there's so much beauty here. And my whole purpose externally is to bring that to the world of work. Right? That's why I launched Humanness a few years ago. And our whole purpose is to bring consciousness to business operations. Not just the individuals, that's people can go on their own journeys. In fact, I would encourage everyone here to reach out to the London School of Tantra and go on a journey as well. Right? But for humanness, it's about bringing it into business operations, bringing that consciousness in. And so what you just described, the ability to imagine being with your business unit or your team And rather than coming into work going, "Oh, like my targets are down," or that, or "I'm scared about losing that job," or "There's been layoffs over there, am I next?" But to actually be able to come in and apply what you just described, where you could actually go, "Do you know what? These are my fellow people, my tribe, if you like, and, we're in this together, and yes, I'm struggling, but also they're probably struggling. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to open up and be vulnerable and struggle together, and who knows what innovation, like to your point about downloads and to your point about ideas, what sort of innovation that might create when people drop the guard and come together and open their hearts. Like, we know spiritually what that feels like, but to the uninitiated, it's just about kindness and human qualities, allowing for things to be, to flow. In fact, there's neuroscience I could drop into right now,
Mm.
but I won't. But before we get too far down that rabbit hole, even though you are this divine, ethereal, wonderful, uh, divine feminine embodiment, you used to work at Lloyd's.
Did. I did. I
So
did. I
so
did.
so this gives us, I spent 20 years and,
Mm.
working multinationals from an advertising standpoint. Both of us
Mm.
have extensive corporate,
Mm.
roots. I think we need to tell that story, Rosa.
Good. I'm so happy to go there. And what I want to just double tap on is this piece of consciousness and just where Tantra fits in. Because truly Tantra, the etymology of the word in the Sanskrit meaning, it really means like tool or vehicle for expansion. So simply Tantra you could see as like another tool for the expansion of consciousness. So I'm not surprised, how it fits in with like that spirituality, but really, really like that's how I invite people to see it. It's not like a religious doctrine. It's not, it is a philosophy, but at its core, it is a tool for the expansion, tool for our expansion, tool for the expansion of consciousness, like even in its etymology, which I just think is really, really, really cool. And yeah, I mean, so as you were saying, yeah, I used to work for Lloyd's Banking Group, and I'll tell you the truth, I loved it. They were an amazing, amazing, amazing organization to work for, and they gave me so much like opportunity. And I remember I was like, even from my early 20s, like right um up to my 30s, I just had so much freedom. And the main reason for that is because I worked in a very unique team. And so my role in corporate was really to shift organizational culture from disempowerment to empowerment. That's what my master's was in, organizational psychiatry and psychology. So how do we create systems change to transform the culture of an organization to be a space that employees feel like fulfilled, satisfied, happy? And my whole thing, even when I was like a teenager, I was like, I just want to, like, the world suffers so much from like mental health challenges, from all these different things. And I was like, we don't need to. I was like, we don't need to. Like, we don't need to. And I was like, okay, we spend, as you said, 80% of our time at work. How can I go in and like change the system? Like, how can I go in? And so it was super, super cool to be in this organization of like 70 to 75,000 people and be responsible as part of this beautiful, small, close-knit team to innovate and to be able to shift organizational culture. And we actually won awards, like external awards for the work that we were doing, because where we started was really empowering employees to experiment within their teams, to use innovation, to create a culture of safety through experimentation and habit change and behavioral change, that they were then able to create change within the teams. And then when the leadership team started being like, wait a minute, what are these guys doing? Why are our customers happier? Like, why are our employees happier? Why are we getting better results on our yearly employee survey? Like, we really got into the data. And what we found was that when when employees felt more empowered, right? When people felt more empowered, their, what was it? Engagement. The engagement went up. The team engagement went up. We had like the highest engagement in the teams that were employing the methodology that we were teaching. And so I spent 5 years, 5 years really in that role, in that corporate world. And then it wasn't until COVID hit and the whole world went completely changed. And to be honest, I'd started opening up to spirituality like the year before COVID. I don't know what it was. I would have never really considered myself that spiritual. Something changed. This would have been like 6 or 7 years ago. Something changed, and I was like, oh, okay, now I'm kind of curious about all of this stuff. The first big Tantra book came into my lap, and of course, I was looking at it to try and connect deeper with my partner at the time, like sexually. That's where that's kind of one of the starts of my tantric journey. I also was diving into it in the meditation and Buddhist side, but like I remember reading this book. I'm reading all this stuff about chakras, and I like skipped over it all. I was like, oh yeah, whatever. That's all like, what's a chakra? I don't believe in any of that sort of stuff. And now I can say, what is it, 6, 7 years later? I'm like, I can feel every single chakra. Can literally feel the energy in every single one. And I remember rereading that chapter of the book like 3 years ago, being like, oh my God, it makes so much sense now. But it's interesting. I always think about my journey, and I like the analogy that you used, is it's like there's a crack, right? It's like what I see is like you crack. You just create a crack, and then that crack allows more expansion. And then things kind of keep, when we talk about consciousness, it's almost like as things keep cracking and cracking open, eventually like the whole vase shatters. But if that shattered like straight away, if that whole vase had shattered for me, to like what I know, like, and feel in my body right now, the amount of ecstasy and bliss and joy and magic and wonder that I can feel right now, if that happened all at once 7 years ago, I would have probably like fried my whole nervous system, because I wouldn't have had the emotional, energetic capacity to hold it all. And so I really think it's so beautiful when we think of work and employment, and we think of like organizations. What I'm really feeling right now, and I think Lloyd's was really at the forefront of back then, it was really radical what we were doing. It was really, really, really radical in a financial institution, one so large, so bureaucratic as that. By the end of 3 years, we had the whole senior leadership team doing the program that we were running. The whole of the senior leadership team was finally like bought into it, which I think is incredible. And that's why, it can take time. It can take time for like that, all of the expansion and all of the cracking. But what I'm really seeing and hearing and experiencing in a lot of the leaders that I talk to is that people are looking for a different way. People are looking to change. Like the whole paradigm of business is changing from one that is, as you were mentioning, so self-centered, to one that is more heart-led. And so the thing that I'm really turned on about like right now is this whole like heart-led leadership. Like how do we create a total rewrite of how we do business so that organizations can experience that expansion? Because I really believe that when leadership teams expand within themselves and through this like consciousness, through this humanness, then the whole vision, the whole like everything expands. Their reach expands, their connection expands, their customer base expands, the abundance expands. Like I have full body chills as I'm saying this, which is always my signal of truth, and that I'm connecting. But it's like truly, I think that we're going to see this more and more. And I think businesses that don't start waking up to this and start to implement this and it can be really subtle ways. We don't have to go to like the full, like, energy orgasms every day and like all the other stuff that we can go into. but like the subtlety of it and those micro shifts within organizational culture are going to change everything. Like we were talking about the tube analogy, just something as simple as that is going to change, is going to be create a whole paradigm shift. And I think leaders are going to be like, oh my God, I didn't know business could feel this good. Like I didn't know like business could feel this good and we could create this much impact and it could feel this good. I think we're done with hustle culture and burnout culture. I think we're
Yeah,
done.
yeah, yeah. And I want to go back to, so you can finish your story, but I just, we're not going to think our way into those changes, right? We can't turn up and sort of run a presentation at work and say, this is what you need to do. Like, and this is why I'm so fascinated by Tantra and its potential within business operations, is because, this is something that must be felt. The change you're describing, that creating the cracks and expanding the vessel, is not something that you can think your way into, right? You can't even necessarily you can't meditate your way into. It needs to be experienced, right? And this is, and Tantra for me, we'll come on to this, which was such an unbelievable visceral experience. It's like that is an awakening, and so I just wanted to emphasize that point as it was fresh in my head at the time.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Is there anything else you wanted me to share about my story, or we can talk
Well,
about
I mean,
that
I would
awakening?
personally love to know what those programs were, but I doubt you'd necessarily be able to explain them. I do have one question though around it, which is, what is when you talked about safety, what does that actually tangibly look like at work?
Actually so grateful that you asked this question, and like I even feel emotional, I can feel the emotion in my body because with all of the kind of misconceptions about what tantra is and isn't, I will tell you that the greatest gift that it has given me is a feeling of embodied safety within myself. And I'll talk about it on an organizational lens as well, but it has to start from within so we can experience it also without. But to give people who don't know me yet like a little flavor, I used to, like when I was, even though I was kind of in this big high powered corporate career, I was still super numb inside. Like everything looked amazing on paper, but I was experiencing a lot of numbness within my body. Like I found it difficult to feel my emotions. I found it difficult to feel like, let's go there, like arousal and turn on and like really. And when I say that, yes, it can be in the sexual sense, but for me, and when we talk about energy in a tantric context, it's like aliveness. Like our arousal, this like life force energy in tantra is also known as like shakti and kundalini energy. And so this is like the life force that literally creates and births life. So when we think about, energy, like it's like aliveness. And so I just didn't feel alive. I felt so numb and disconnected from everything. And one of the reasons why that was happening is because my body didn't feel safe. Like there was so much fear, there was so much anxiety. I was going in and out of bouts of depression. And people find this hard to believe because it's only been like, what, 6 years? And I'm like so alive. So alive. Like, I'm like, oh my God. Like, I want everyone to be able to experience this because then I didn't know how good it could get. And, I'm like 5 years in. Who am I going to be in 20 years, Quinn? That's like the thing that like also blows my mind. What am I going to be experiencing then if this is how good it is? And if people just knew that, but the thing that has been the key in that journey is this embodiment of safety. And so when I like to talk about tantra is for me in all of that stripping away of the things that are not ourselves, of going through the 12 fundamentals that we teach, what we're really doing, like actually the secret of it, what we're really doing is creating more safety within the body. And that's through truly nervous system regulation. But Tantra is a tool that helps us get there. And so when I think of a work context, so for example, if I think of maybe how I used to be in work and I'd be so afraid of telling my boss something that was going on personally that was making it really hard for me to do the piece of work that I was given. And I would be like in such a state of dysregulation. And there would be like this fear-based, not really in my team, but I heard this more in other teams, in different parts of different organizations, is like they would be afraid because they'd be afraid they'd get fired, or they'd be afraid that their bonus would get diminished, or they'd be afraid of they'd be afraid that, you know, maybe they'd be laid off. So there was just so much fear in the organization. So that would stop people from speaking up, from sharing big, bold ideas, from making improvements into systems because it felt unsafe to speak up, or it felt unsafe to do that. And where I see Tantra come in this way is, oh, actually, is creating that embodied safety, but then also relational safety within teams. So having the spaciousness to talk about, like, to really connect on a human to human level, to be real about like what's going on in people's context so that we can be a team. And I'll speak, you know, in my team personally, one of my team members recently had a bereavement. And so, of course, I was like, take the whole week off, like, and take as long as you need. And we just redistributed everything. Easy, done. And that creates the safety so that she knows that she can thrive. And another one of my team members is also having this like some personal stuff. Great. So me and my other, you know, the rest of us, we take on a little bit more of that. And there's like this natural, like symbiotic flow that happens when we are sharing resources in that way, when we honor the waves of the human experience so that we can support each other. And all of that creates so much safety when we can be honest about what is alive within the team environment, because when one person is dysregulated or having intensity, we feel it. Like the whole team will feel it. So it's so important to support that safety that people can experience, and really that nervous system regulation that gets to come within that. And the way that I like to describe this when it comes to energy, because again, that's such a core piece in Tantra, is all about how we are managing our energy, how we are managing those pieces, but is we have like stress. We have stress, like, which is that, you know, that anxious, activated energy. We have burnout and collapse, which is that warmth energy. And you could see it as like fight, flight, and freeze. And then we have what I would say is creative energy. So I say we have stress, burnout, or creation. And we want like the whole team to be in creation because that's where we're going to thrive. But we need to create that space of safety and regulation so that the team can really be in that space of creation more and more and more of the time.
Mm. And this is why Tantra as a technique I'm so interested in and so excited about applying. You know, humanness is about creating the environment for human qualities to emerge, including safety. What we know is that in order to feel safe, you know, it requires trust, and to have trust, you need vulnerability. To be vulnerable, you must be honest, but honest not just with others, but with yourself, right? And to the ability to be honest with yourself, and then to have the courageousness to be vulnerable. There's a lot of moving parts that ultimately create the space for one to then feel safe, because it's not just about one being able to do that, but with another, because the other person then must share their vulnerability. And it's in doing that that trust is formulated. And through the trust, we get the safety. And it's like, okay, so, but to create an environment where that can be incubated, right? And Tantra as a technique to be able to do that, you know, this won't be the last of our conversations, Rosa, but like really, humanness is trailblazing, you know, ancient practice and ritual
Sure.
into corporate. So, you know, we're going to need you to lead the tantric side of things. Um, it's just, yeah, it's so powerful. So it's the last question about your origin story. So then, so then, what was the leap? to London School of Tantra?
Oh gosh, great question. So so the leap to the London School of Tantra and this, oh my gosh, this is where I think this comes in, this work is like so important, is so one of the fundamentals as well that we teach, and just to kind of go back on the safety piece, one of the core fundamentals that I think is so important for the workplace that we don't always include is boundaries. And that's always where we start. We have like the base, this is kind of in the base fundamentals that we teach, but is really about boundaries. And so I just want to mention that because I think it's something that we struggle with at work, and that actually when we can create the safety to honor our own boundaries and also express our boundaries in work, we create more freedom. My team tells me no all the time. Team tells me no all the time. They're like, actually, no, Rosa, I don't have capacity for that right now. And you know, for me as a leader, I have to trust that, right? So that's where the trust comes in. And then we either reprioritize or we rework it so it becomes a yes. So none of my team are ever in people pleasing mode. And that's something I'm really proud of as a leader, because I know that they don't work for me for the money. They work for me because they love what we're doing, and they love me as a leader, and they love the mission. So where it comes from, this leap into the London School of Tantra, and this is another one of my favorite fundamentals that I think is so important, particularly for businesses, is intuition. Is intuition. And so I never, believe it or not, like it was never part of my plan to found the London School of Tantra. Like it was never part of my plan to even teach Tantra. It was something that I loved, something I loved studying and geeking out on. I loved going to workshops. I loved you know, it was part of my own personal spiritual evolution. And yes, I would bring things into my coaching practice, like my one-on-one coaching practice, which I still love and still run. Um, but I never thought I would found like a tantra school. If you told me 4 years ago, I would have like been like, no way, no way. And let alone it would become like the largest female founded school that we would be serving, you know, we have thousands of students in person every single year. Like when I actually looked at the numbers and I was like, what? And so truly what I can say is that jump was, I was going to Tantra workshops every single week in Ibiza and loving it. Like it completely changed my life. There was like a winter season where for a couple months, every single week, I would be going and experiencing it in person, like living it in person. And I can tell you that those 3 months of doing that changed my life more than like 5 years of just studying it and doing the meditations and doing the mantras and things like that. And this is, you know, circles back to what we were talking about at the beginning, you know, that difference is, it's this interpersonal element. We can try and think our way, we can try and meditate our way, we can try and like silo ourselves to liberation. But actually, it only really happens when we're being faced with the things that we're kind of afraid of. And for so many of it, it's intimacy, it's human interaction, it's like love, it's like those pieces. So I was going to these workshops and being put in these exercises, and I'm excited to hear some of your experience at our workshop. But I was going through these exercises and I was like, oh my God, this is so uncomfortable in different ways. Can I honor my boundaries in this moment? Can I speak my desires? Can I let myself be silly? Can I let myself play? Can I let myself eye gaze without freaking out? You know, because it's very intimate and vulnerable. And
What's
what
eye
would come,
gazing for those who don't know?
great question, because this is something that makes me laugh. I've yet to go to a tantric workshop where there isn't eye gazing. And so eye gazing really simply is looking left eye to left eye into someone else's eyes. And for those of you listening, like, oh, man, you'll be amazed at how much we don't look at someone in someone's eyes. And the main reason for this is because we're afraid of really being seen. And so that's what can keep us smaller. That's what can limit our potential if we have that fear. And so through this practice of eye gazing, what happens is we get to really, in the tantric sense, is we get to meet the other as another expression of the divine. So with awe and wonder, as like another expression of consciousness with awe and wonder. And so as we start to like look left eye to left eye, what happens is the more that you can stay with yourself and the fears and the emotions, the things that come up, a lot of the time people cry in our workshops, even just from 90 seconds of eye gazing, because it feels so intimate and so vulnerable, and that they haven't felt safe enough to really be seen or to see another in that moment. If you're in partnership, it is one of the most beautiful things that you can do is just sit, set a timer for 3 minutes, gaze left eye to left eye. And we gaze left eye to left eye because it is believed to be the feminine side. And so the receptive side. So it's really, we get to see each other in that way and receive and be received by each other in that way. So it's a really, really, really stunning practice. And they say the eyes are the seat of the soul. So it's really about deepening that level of intimacy. Because so often in conversations, you might find someone's like, oh yeah, I'm listening. But you don't feel that because their presence isn't there. And
Yes.
so when it comes to that presence, that eye gazing is one of the most important things.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. It's stunning and it's scary. I can still find it uncomfortable. And for me, my biggest thing that changed, actually, if I speak really vulnerably, is from experiences that, I have a history of trauma and abuse, and particularly around sexuality. And it's, this work has completely changed my life in that way. Like I didn't know it was possible to heal from, I think the healing journey is nonlinear, but to really integrate a lot of that so I could feel so free as I do now in my own eros, in my own sexuality, in my own being. But probably one of the biggest things that those workshops changed was safety with men. It's like I used to be, because all of the perpetrators, unfortunately, even though I identify as queer, all of the perpetrators in my history were all men. And so for me, like I felt so afraid of men. So it was blocking off, potential love. It was blocking off intimacy. I was so afraid to be in space with men. And so through that journey, I'm like, oh my God, I fucking love men. Like I am no longer afraid of men, of the masculine. And that has unlocked so much deeper love in my life, so much beauty, so much more connection, so much more connection, so much more power, because I'm not losing myself in those interactions. I'm not hiding from them. I'm not running away from them. And so I went through these 3 months of like total transformation. Like I felt so free. I felt so liberated. I felt so safe. I felt so connected. I was receiving, I was so in surrender, so able to receive things that I didn't even know were possible in life, in love. And then I was about to go back to London, and I said to my teacher, I was like, there's nothing like this in London. I was like, what am I going to do? And he was like, Rosa, he was like, why don't you create it? He's like, you have studied this for years. You are like, you know this work, like it's in your body, it's in your soul. He's like, you've been coaching, in this way. I'm trained as, a sex, love, and relationship coach, but through a tantric approach. So, like that's my training. That's my, I've been, like, that's what I was studied in as well. And he was like, if not you, like, who's going to do it? Who's going to do it? And I was like, no, no. Don't be ridiculous. Like, I don't know enough. I'm not X enough. I'm not this enough. I'm not X, Y. It's all of the fears. But, through this tantric path, I know how to meet those fears with love and strip them away to come back to what is true at the core. And I remember I was going to call it something else, right? And I remember I was sitting and I was doing my tantric practices. I was like breathing and I was moving and I was like moving the energy through my body. And I was like sitting in this very, like blissful space. And I opened myself up just to like listen. And I asked the question, I was like, all right, what should I call this? What should I call it? What should I call this? The school. What should we call the school? We've got these different names. Oh my God, I've got chills like just re-remembering this. And I kid you not, it hit me in the heart like a lightning bolt. And my whole body went and started to like shudder and like it like started to like move. And I was like, oh my gosh. And the name it just went in like such deep clarity, was London School of Tantra. And again, my logical brain went, no, surely that exists. And so that's why that fundamental of like, that actually it's two fundamentals there of energy and intuition are so important, particularly when we're thinking about, if I think about leaders who want to create big impact in the world, who want to make change, who want to do incredible, incredible things, the opening up the energy centers and this channel that we all have, opening that up and listening to more intuition and trusting that intuition, even if it doesn't always make logical sense, I think is like, for me, Tantra really brings us, I've got full body chills. Wow. Like it really brings us back to our true nature and able to listen to more of like, those signs, those signals, like for me, I believe like the universe, right? I
Mhm.
believe we're always being guided by something greater than ourselves. And when we can listen to that, it changes everything. It's like when sometimes the things that don't make sense, you'll then see in 3 years' time, like, oh, that's why I did that way.
It's a perfect segue into this
Mm.
question around human energy. But humanness, we believe passionately that we are energetic, right? And I'm not basing this on anything spiritual or woo-woo. It's the science behind. I mean, Albert Einstein, Max Planck, Nikola Tesla, every single one. We are energy, right? We are energy, and if you break down an atom enough, it's bound by energy. You could call that energy something spiritual if you want, but it's energy. This book is vibrating because it's energy. If you zoom in close enough, that's science. I'm not going to even get into the semantic. Human energy, right, is utterly neglected, right, within well, most things, to be honest,
Literally.
but particularly at work. At humanness, we really champion it. We measure it, we nurture it, we cater for it, we acknowledge it, we understand that if we can generate energetic coherence between an individual and its team and their
Ugh.
organization, that you can generate energetic coherence which creates that creative energy source that you were talking about. There were the three and that you described, and the creative energy source is infinite. Like, you don't have burnout when you're in that place. You don't have these these illnesses that come off the back of it. But what I want to discuss with you from a place of tantra, I guess, but also your learnings, is what is human energy when we talk about it? Like, can we help the listener understand what human energy is and why it needs to be catered for?
1,000%. This is one of the things that I think is so important to discuss, particularly in like a work context, because there is so much like burnout in work. Like how many people are going off sick? I remember I even almost went off sick when I was employed because of the way that we're not taught how to how to expand our energetic capacity and potential and how to work with energy. And that is one of the core things that we get to explore as well in Tantra, because it's all about energy. It's all about energy. And so when the way I like to think of energy in like a real simple flavor is like energy is just aliveness. It's like how alive, for me, it's like how alive do I feel in this moment? For me, it's like it's aliveness and vitality and capacity and capacity. And so everything is energy, as we say, like everything is energy. And if I am suppressing anything in my body, whether it's an emotion, whether it's a fear, whether it is anything else, if I'm suppressing any of that, because that's also energy, right? It's also energy. If I'm suppressing any of that, then I'm like shutting down. I'm like shutting down. I'm going into that collapse or burnout space, or potentially even the stress space, depending how we're responding. But when I allow myself to be like, oh, actually, that feels painful. That's really intense. That's really challenging. I'm afraid. When we really allow ourselves to acknowledge what's alive in the present moment, that's where the freedom and liberation comes from. So for me, energy is also that aliveness of whatever is in the present moment without needing to necessarily fix or change it. But in its core, when I think about human energy, is like energy is really vitality. And we can harness this energy through like tantric practice. We can really harness this energy for our greatest potential in so many different ways. I'm curious if that kind of answers the question, and if you want me to talk a little bit deeper about, like, the way that Tantra really uses energy in this way and how people can experience more of that liberation, or if there's something else that you think that the audience needs to really like bridge that gap.
Both. Right, but
Great.
but 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 we'll come but I think the first point you made will come to in a moment. It's so let's start with the second one, but I just wanted to add a little. I was lucky enough to study, a couple of years ago, history of South Asia, and I did modules in Indian Buddhist philosophy and Taoism. And, there is a lot of within Taoism as well about this life force energy, the vitality. um, I have been lucky enough to experience physically what you're talking about. It
Yeah.
is almost, I think, impossible to describe to someone unless they've experienced, which means that someone has to go into wanting to practice it with a degree of faith in the pursuit of it, which begs its own questions as to why someone would then pursue this unknown thing. And there are many reasons. I don't want to necessarily fall down that rabbit hole. I guess what I'm saying is that what you are describing is predominantly in East Asian tradition and practice.
Yeah.
Qigong, Tai
Yeah.
Chi,
Yeah.
like you reference Kundalini,
Mm.
these things are there. Do you know what? Even in Kabbalah, it,
Yeah.
it's there. Like, like in Judaism, they're quite good at hiding that element because it's a little more orthodox, but it's in the Kabbalah if you want to find it. And so, what I'm trying to do is, which is to my point about wanting to your question about how do we bridge it, is that, yeah, how do we bridge this, right? You used to work in Lloyd's Banking Group.
Mm.
I'm trying to bring Tantra, for the sake of argument right now, into the corporate operations. And what we're talking about here really is human energy. We understand the importance of it. How do we bridge, right, what we understand and what we have experienced to a business leader of a marketing team, or a HR, or an HR director or someone in charge of people and culture? How do we
Yeah.
do this?
Oh my God, I love this question because this is so my jam. Um, and actually to use, like, I just thought of a really, really simple analogy that might help explain it before we get into kind of more of the energetic, like, practice, like the how the tantrikas would kind of practice it, the how the Taoists would use energy. But the really simple, like, modern day example that I can think about is like for those of us who go to the gym, like we go to the gym because it also helps expand, like, in a way, even if you don't think of it like this yet, is it helps expand our energetic capacity. It's like, why do we go to the gym? Oh, it helps, actually, we feel alive afterwards, right? We have the dopamine, the oxytocin, the serotonin, like, running through our bodies. If we even think about, drinking a cup of coffee, right? After that cup of coffee, like, I feel alive. Like, for me, that's all that's energy. And so what the truth is, and if we want to bridge that gap between why this is important for businesses to really focus on, I believe, in their teams, and particularly their leadership culture, because I know we all know everything. If we have that at the top, then it's easier to trickle down into culture if we have leaders who are bought into it. But the reason it's so important, is like, imagine going through imagine running a company and you're like here and you're stressed about the money, you're stressed about the team, you're stressed about the budgets, you're stressed about the layoffs, you're stressed about all of those different pieces, and getting people just to feel that energy and that capacity. Like, I can even feel, my shoulders crunch inwards, right? My shoulders are inwards. And so it's very difficult from this space, from this energetic space, to have the big visions, to think about the big, like the things that are actually going to change, like that are actually going to increase the revenue, that are going to create bigger impact, change customer experience. If we're stuck in that stress space or the burnout space, so the survival or the kind of like numbness, then we're not going to be effective at work. We're not going to be productive. We're not going to be, we're not going to be able to change the organization and also change the world. But what happens when we learn to cultivate our energy and expand our energy is that we start to open ourselves up. So it's that feeling, often people will also describe, I think this is very well documented, is, after like going for a run or going to the gym, you're like, all right, like, wow, oh my God, I just had my greatest idea. I just had my greatest idea. And the same thing, like walking in nature. And what all we're doing is truly supporting ourselves to have more capacity, because one, we're re-regulating the nervous system. Again, very, very, very documented scientifically. What we're doing is we're re-regulating the nervous system. But two, we're also like from that space, because we have the oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, these bliss chemistry, we're also opening up to like more creative, like thinking and problem solving. That's why, dopamine, that's the reward chemical that's so important to feel into creative ideas. And so often, if we are stuck in this space of stagnancy within our energy, which I think we are conditioned in a lot of businesses to do, got to work harder, got to keep moving, got to keep going, don't take time for myself, because that's a whole other thing that we can go into, because often we don't feel like that's a productive use of our time or we're worthy of it. But when I see organizations that create a culture of taking breaks, resting, going to the gym, those sorts of things, you see like, oh, wow, like we're like the teams who do like team sports and even things like that. I fucking love all of that stuff. So that's like one kind of quite mainstream way of seeing things, is like through exercise. Like it's a very, very well scientifically like researched in how that impacts our energy and how that impacts even behavior and culture in organizations. So the way that I like to bridge it, if I was speaking to, and like when I do speak to organizations about this, and when even I was working in Lloyd's, we would never start with the tool, right? We would never start with like, Tantra is the way to change this. No, we'd be like, look, if your employees feel more energized every single day, if they feel more expanded, if they have more dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin flowing through their bodies, they are going to not only be more productive, which is ultimately going to impact the bottom line, they are going to have more creative ideas and problem solving, which is going to have a greater impact on the way that the company runs, and also on the customers and so you're going to have greater impact. So you're going to create more, you're going to expand more, and ultimately will have more revenue and more profit, because you'll also have less people going off sick. So we can actually really, and I used to do this a lot, we can really bring it to the bottom line. We can really, really bring it to the productivity element and the profit element. That's not the thing that turns me on. I mean, it also turns me on, but the thing that turns me on the most is having a workforce that is so alive and so filled with energy.
Yeah. I mean, so what I like about your bridge there, when you sort of landed with the chemicals the body releases, right? Science. And we talk a lot about this as well, which is that, you know, the brainwave state for fear, fight or flight, which is high beta brainwaves, very quick, high beta, you can measure it. And that state of is for survival. That's why our bodies create it, and the chemicals released are, you know, cortisol, adrenaline, things which are
Mhm.
really good in a short burst, but deadly if sustained over prolonged periods of time. And so what the techniques we use at Humanist drop people from high beta to alpha to theta. And what you've just described there is also what happens to the body when that drop happens, and we allow for the different set of chemicals to be released. And then, so this is what I like about in answering this question, is we are describing some science behind why energy shifts, right? It's not just, you know, magic. It's like this goes from here to here to here. And it's what the ancients knew, you know, this is what they knew this is how you did things and how you could influence the body and the mind and the impact it would have. They may not have had the exact science as to why, but they knew.
And do you know what's wild? Even eye gazing activates the dorsal vagal system. So it's that intimacy and connection so that you come into more rest and digest. So eye gazing, these practices, like the intimacy practices that we, the connection games, like all of the stuff that we do in our workshops, it's all nervous system regulation.
I think this is a good segue into the next point, actually, which is some more granularity around London School of Tantra, but also my experience, which was within play, and actually the pertinence of that eye gazing element. Because when I did eye gazing in the LST London School of Tantra workshop, I believe you introduced it as, you know, it's almost like the bond between mother and child, you know, that feeling of that deep love of feeling seen, and that
Mm,
really hit me. And yeah, this is I really want to share vulnerably what happened for me, because I went to the workshop to sort of understand presence within a sexual dynamic. That was
mm,
definitely my motivations. You know, I had been reading also The Multi-Orgasmic Man,
mhm,
which is basically very rooted in Taoist practice.
mhm.
It's again ancient wisdom. And very very powerful. But again, it's a book. You can only do so much by reading. You have to practice these things. But that's what I turned up to the workshop for. And I didn't really know much about what it was going to be. It was one of the fundamental classes, and this one happened to be around play. And I was like, okay, you know, and you talked about that sort of awkward feeling that can come up when we start pushing ourselves out of boundaries. And I was like, I don't like being silly. You know, I find it like really, I'd rather tell you my most vulnerable, traumatic life story, like to 1,000 people, than I would being just a bit silly, you know. So for me, I was like, oh, okay. And but I threw myself into it, as I always tend to do nowadays. What happened for me, though, had nothing, it was nothing directly linked to anything sexual, but it was absolutely profound. And, you know, whether it was, I think it was probably triggered by your statement about eye gazing, about, because I found eye gazing very uncomfortable historically as well. I remember first encountering it 7 years ago in rehab, actually, where the therapists had us do it, and I couldn't stop laughing. You know, it was like an uncontrollable awkwardness where I had to laugh through it. But this time round, I really went into it, and that statement you made about, you know, the mother-child thing. So my abandonment wound comes from my mother, you know, who
Mhm.
I you know, I love my mother. We've done a lot of healing, but that's where my wound came from, maternal abandonment. And so for me, being able to reconnect with that concept of feeling seen on that intimate sort of unconditional sort of love, that oneness that comes
Mm.
from seeing oneself in another, which really is what I believe love is even especially romantically, is seeing oneself in another, was the trigger. But then what happened over the course of the workshop was it just dawned on me profoundly that I never gave myself permission as a child to feel joy. Like, that doesn't mean I didn't have fun, and it didn't mean I didn't have good times or even a good childhood. But for me growing up, it was this idea that my environment doesn't feel safe. Not because I was abused or anything. It was that my parents argued a lot, pretty emotionally unavailable, bless them. I never felt like, what is there going to be an argument? Is there uncertainty? The energy of the household was very, very uncertain. And so I was like, well, you don't have permission to feel joy, So, and even as an adult, if I felt joy, I'd intercept it with, oh, no, wait, you have some other reason to not be feeling joy right now. What about that thing you have to do, or that achievement you have to do? Or what about that thing you did when you were in the active addiction? You don't deserve to feel joy. And how I connected it to being, 10 years old, just on my own playing in the woods or whatever, and just, just acknowledging that. And I was like, whoa. And I've done a lot of work, right? Like, so I'm in 12-step recovery, which I actively do for the last 7 years. I've done analysis, therapy, all sorts of inner work, right? And yet it was in this sort of energetic practice of Tantra that this revelation presented itself to me. And it really blew the doors off what I thought I was there for. And I mean, I feel maybe I should just carry on and go into the second workshop, or maybe.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I just wanna say it's amazing, and this is not we see this every single time, and I just wanna tell the listeners, it was a 2-hour workshop, it was just 2 hours, and what I found with Tantra as well is that in 2 hours, we can sometimes cut through what we've tried to explore for, like, several years in therapy. Like, I've had so many students say that they were like, "I've been struggling with this for so long," and like in one workshop, it's like completely changed it. And I think it's because, as we've been speaking, but it's because it goes into that embodiment. Because otherwise we're kind of really like, we can go around, we can read, we can do it. But when you're actually in the room interacting with other human beings, because that's often what we're really afraid of as well in that intimacy, that relational space, and at work, at that too. But it just cuts through so much. And so I love, again, so many people come to Tantra for sex, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's like fucking epic because it's great to have that catalyst. But what everybody often says is like, but then I found more of myself. Then I found more, and people will say like, I found more of the divine or God or whatever that, or and wonder, whatever that means to
But
you.
that and that's it. And I want to talk about what that really means, because
Mm,
if you want to have, my experience has been a deeply intimate and powerful, uh sexual experiences, you must have that inner empowerment and sovereignty and safety and love and self-love. Like, these things must be there. Turning up with fear and questioning my self-worth, it robs me of that intimacy. But it does actually lend itself to the second workshop that I attended,
yeah.
which was the energy orgasms workshop. And, and that is what it says on the tin, energy orgasms, learn how to have energy orgasms. And I'll ask you all about that in a second. The multi-orgasmic man, which is the Taoist practice, is about being able to, um, to control the body, to be able to move energy throughout the body, to move the orgasm away from just the typical, uh, stereotypical understanding of what an orgasm is, to being able to feel energy all over your body, not just as a woman, but as a man. I mean, people think, to be able to have multiple orgasms as a man is is not a thing, but energetically it is possible. And so I turned up, with Osha to this workshop thinking, right, next level. I'm gonna learn I'm gonna learn and master energy orgasm. What happened was not necessarily that, right? Because what actually happened was me, like like crying uncontrollably, like for 30 minutes, and I never cry. Right? So like, talk about energetically unblocking.
Mm,
So we did the workshop, we're practicing the techniques, and then we went into it, and and I was with Osha, and it's just like I felt the energy move, and then burst through my heart,
yeah,
at which point it was just like tears, sobbing, like deep heat,
yeah,
like so cathartic, such it was an unbelievable release. And in that moment, I really understood the power of this practice, because I've been carrying this energetic blocks and weight for so long, and I never feel like crying, but yeah, the fact that this needed to come out in the way it did was amazing. So yes, I actually know how to apply that to energy orgasms, but what actually happened was just unbelievable. So there's
yeah.
me teeing you up for energy orgasms.
Uh, it's so beautiful. I mean, I just really want to celebrate you allowing yourself to be in that space, and to like allowing like the energy to be in the body. And I think one of the misconceptions that people have when they think the word energy orgasm sounds, I mean, it can be super juicy and it sounds amazing, but from the context, from the context that I teach energy orgasms from, is it's really like a full body, or like orgasm. And when I say orgasm, it doesn't necessarily mean, I think we are so conditioned that an orgasm is like, we couple it with like ejaculation, for a man, or even like often for women, like also like a clitoral orgasm, that like big bang, like, wow, that's the orgasm. But actually, when we think about energy orgasms as a concept, it's a lot subtler. And it's more like these waves of bliss moving through the body. And yes, they can get very climactic, or it can really stay as this like gentle flow of energy through the body. And when I hear you share your experience, that there's this concept that bliss is any feeling fully felt. Any feeling fully felt. And the energy in a tantric lens, this like Shakti Kundalini, is intelligent. And so it will bring what you need to bring. And sometimes it might be, grief that's been stored underneath that needs to be released. Sometimes it's rage. Sometimes it's ecstasy. And often when we allow the grief and everything, then we also get to the ecstasy. And so I'm curious if you could even feel like a flavor of that, like bliss, like within the tears being released, if that was part of your experience as well or not.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm. Yeah,
It was exactly the relief, of this sort of, calcified pressure, and
yeah,
just being able to just let it go. That was the thing. It was just letting it go. And this isn't a direct comparison. It's like when you're bursting for the toilet, the bliss that you might feel. It's not a direct comparison, but you would say it's pretty blissful in that release,
yeah.
and just being able to let go of things that I have so
Mm.
profoundly held on to. That is a bliss. That's
Yeah.
bliss.
Amazing, amazing. And for those who have no idea what we're talking about, I'm going to explain a little bit about what an energy orgasm is, how it works, and then I'm also going to bring it back to why I also think this is important in a business context. And maybe not necessarily everyone's having energy orgasms in a business context, but I do think these practices are so important for our organizations in a space of increasing vitality and life force for all of the things that we have already mentioned. But in a nutshell, the way that I would describe an energy orgasm is waves of energy and bliss flowing through the body. Just really, really, really simple as that. So it's like, okay, I am not touching myself. I'm not, I'm just breathing, sounding, moving, which are three orgasmic tools from this tantric lens of breath, movement, and sound. And so, I think what's also important for the listeners is nobody in this workshop was touching themselves or being touched. You can have blended experiences, like you could have energy orgasms with physical touch as well, but I'm going to keep it really, really kind of like in its purest sense of the form. And all we're doing, I mentioned the chakras a little earlier, but I'm going to go a little deeper into them now. But from this kind of ancient philosophy, and particularly again in Tantra, we work with the chakra system, which are 7 energetic centers within the body, which map to different parts of our human experience. And also Western science has also started mapping these energy centers, to different neural structures, endocrine functions, hormonal functions. So I think it's very important to note that actually each of these parts of the body do have their own function as well. And so to give a little map, we have the root, which is the perineum or cervix. So you have the root, and that's really responsible for stability and safety. Then you have the sacral chakra, which is just above the pubic bone and below the navel. And that's like power, well, it's actually sensuality and creativity. It's really sensuality, creativity. Then you have the solar plexus, which is just above the navel and like below that kind of middle bit of the rib cage, like the sternum. That area, that's the solar plexus, which is all to do with power. Then you have the heart, which is very obvious, love, the throat, expression, third eye, intuition, and crown, which is consciousness. So the third eye is, just in case anyone's listening and not watching, the third eye is just above the eyebrows in the middle of the forehead, in between kind of the eyebrows and above in the middle of the forehead. And the crown is like right at the top of the head. And now from this tantric perspective, and to really experience states of bliss and ecstasy, what we want, and this like kind of our true orgasmic nature. And the reason why we want to do this is ultimately actually to increase our vitality. Like if I was to really put it so simple for everyone to understand, I can get a bit more into the slight woo-woo tantric space, but really, really the power of this practice for me is it increases my capacity, increases my vitality. If I'm stressed, it re-regulates my nervous system. One of the things that they say as we move the energy through the body, we can get into some kind of the science within the cerebral spinal fluid and how that helps to like remove toxins from the body. So these energetic practices are also supporting toxins being removed from the body. Again, the science is slowly catching up with this. But really think of it like you're flushing your body. So that cortisol gets like flushed out. And we start to fill the body with more and more and more vitality so that you have more energy, so that you have more, more ability to like live life to the fullest. You have more energy for your children. You have more energy for your partner. You have more energy for your work. You're more open to big creative ideas. And then of course you've got the chemical cocktails, the bliss chemistry also coming in. And as we were talking about, we're re-regulating to, we're re-regulating the nervous system. So you're out of fight flight, you're out of stress and burnout, and into that creation zone. So there is actually a lot of science behind this. Now, there's a lot of science about why this is important. And when we get into a tantric concept, and when we bring in like more of the spirituality and more of consciousness, so from a tantric lens, you have this Shakti Kundalini, this creative life force energy that originates at the base of the spine at that root chakra. And as we breathe in this particular practice, the way that I teach energy orgasms is that you're breathing up the back of the body, chakra by chakra, and you're like drawing that energy up the back of the body, up the back of the body, up the back of the body. And so you're starting from the root, you're going to up each of these 7 energy centers. And we do this slowly so that we can expand, so that we can work with also whatever is alive and needs to be released. So the ancient tantrikas and yogis would know this, like even a lot of asanas work on different chakra points to release any stuckness or stagnancy, like back bends. You're really like opening the heart, you're releasing the energy like down here. Any of you're doing a lot of root work when you're doing like even pigeon pose, right? It's like, it's all about like releasing any stuckness, any stagnancy in this energetic system. They would also call it like the nadis, the energy, the way that energy flows around the body, so that you can again be in that full state of expression and liberation. And what happens when we start to move the energy energetically through the chakra system and we get all the way up to the crown from this tantric lens? So if we've got Shakti, who's the divine feminine, the creative life force energy. And I say divine feminine, regardless of gender or sexual expression, we all have divine feminine and masculine. And then Shiva is Shakti's like counterpart, right? He's the divine masculine. He is consciousness, quantum energy, like structure, stability. And so as Shakti rises through the body, when you get to the crown, you get to meet that Shiva energy, that consciousness. So we could also just say consciousness if Shakti and Shiva aren't resonating. But then what you allow when you open all of these energy channels is you get to connect to consciousness. You get to connect to source. So that's what's happening spiritually, metaphysically in the body, is that as we're moving this creative life force energy up, when we get to the crown, we suddenly have the energetic capacity in our human bodies, to experience consciousness and let consciousness come into the body. And so that's where we get we can get downloads. We can get a lot of inspiration, a lot of intuition. That's where the name, the London School of Tantra, came from. It's where, the next thing that we're about to launch, which I know is going to change the world, like I feel it, like also came from opening myself up to this energetic space. And so I'm so open that it's like, I'm like, and genuinely, if people are into this, the way that I can only describe it, and this might sound mad to some of you, is I literally feel like I'm connected to the fabric of reality and the universe. It's like I'm in the bliss field. I'm like connected to everything, and it feels so good. And the reason that a lot of tantric practices involve this energy work is because it's about the remembering that we are not separate from the divine. We are not separate from consciousness, because that's what happens when we're stuck in there is we forget. We forget. So it's a process and a huge practice of remembering our true nature and what is accessible and possible for us. So that's why you see me like this all the fucking time, and why life is so good is because I'm always connecting to bliss. I'm always remembering bliss. I'm always working on my energy.
It's such a beautiful loop into, what can Tantra mean for work for me? Because again, humanness is bringing consciousness to business. And what you just landed on there was consciousness. And this is what it is. And, on the simplest level, is it about the idea that I am not the center of the universe, but a part of it, waking up, remembering, connecting to, because it's not just consciousness to the divine, but that we are one. and that's where that selflessness comes in, which changes and opens up for so much to happen. It's really like for me, like I this even just this recording has given me what I needed to know about how we bring tantra into business operations, its purpose, and it's not about energy orgasms per se, but it's about the physical practice of waking up, of waking up to consciousness and remembering, which is exactly where I wanted to land.
Hmm.
Before though, is there anything like what else is going on for? Is there anything you want to share that's going on for you? That I mean, obviously, we'll put all of your links and
Yeah.
everything, in the notes and the bio and everything. But is there anything else that you wanted to share?
Mostly what's on my heart right now is just how much I wanna get, like, teams of leaders in a room, like, doing this practice and see what it opens up, right? For their strategy, for their strategic visioning, and, like, getting people into, into their heart, like, really heart-led leadership that's also open to this experience of consciousness and, like, allowing that consciousness to flow in. And the way that I really see it is like intimacy and energy. It's like intimacy and energy. Like the intimacy creates the safety and just like human to human intimacy. Not more than that, just human to human intimacy. And so when we have a leadership team that's in that coherence, and I'm sure like, your listeners might know, but there's like so much research about heart coherence. And when we are in coherence and connected, like what gets to birth from that space, and also really feeling that energy piece, intimacy and energy. And then when we feel that energy, when we can connect more to that energy, I'm gonna be I think I'm gonna be in awe of like what leaders come up with, what visionaries come up with, what moves through people when they see that. I think it's gonna blow people's minds. Like, and I've got chills because it's almost like I can feel the ripple effects of this in teams and in leaders and in organizations. So many people go into mushroom ceremonies or ayahuasca ceremonies or things like that, or psychedelics, to kind of access these states of consciousness. What people don't realize, and what I love about Tantra, is you can access this every day. We don't need to blow ourselves out of our bodies.
Well, I can say, as a man who has been abstinent from drugs and alcohol and all mind and mood altering substances for 7 years, that you absolutely can, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the thing. There is nothing that really I haven't experienced
Mm.
completely sober that
Yeah.
people describe plant medicine as sort of helping them achieve. And, yeah, okay, maybe some intense hallucinations, but the actual, the experience, the awakening, absolutely.
Go.
What did I want to say? Like this is like watch this. What like to the listener, watch this space. I get asked a lot. Well, what's the human role in the future with AI? Right? Like what's gonna happen? Okay, running a consultancy called Humanness. Okay, everything's AI. What's the future for human? And this is where I stand. I believe AI, and I don't even like AI. I don't really use it, right? I don't really understand it. Don't really want to, right? But I believe AI will usher in a golden age of humanity.
Yeah.
Because if all of these tasks and jobs and things are all going to be taken away, well, what does that leave us with? Well, it leaves us with the space to be more human. Well, what does be more human mean? Well, be more human means what we have always been doing as a species, which is connecting with ourselves, striving for consciousness, wanting to connect with the divine, connecting with the sun, moon, and nature, and whatever else it is,
I
which is
love that.
what we did before the Industrial Revolution, really. So what we're talking about now, like the problem is that people have forgotten how to be human. That's the thing. And so what we're doing and what we're trying to, the movements that we are a part of is to bring about, and I loved the word you used, this remembering, you know, and
Yeah.
to bring and to create the space that this stuff can re-emerge and take hold. So like, Rosa, I'm deeply grateful
Mhm.
that we've had this time together and that you were willing to go on this little journey with me. And
Yeah.
I'm going to be actively involved in lots of London School of Tantra stuff moving forward, and I hope that you and I will also curate and carve our collaborative experiences for the corporate world as well. So people in
Ah,
that, by all means, reach out. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, any closing words?
Only that I'm super excited and just remembering like our true nature is creation, and that's what I'm excited about, is to see what we create, to see what we create. And of course, if any listeners want to come join us in London, we have all of our in-person events. Highly recommend. I think Quinn, my God, best testimonials ever. And Quinn's not alone in that. We get it time and time again, every single time. Even my team, we have a whole team of facilitators who run the workshops, and I've just been seeing emails coming through because I wasn't there that weekend, and just emails coming through of like, oh my God, this has changed my life. It's truly, truly life changing. And I think so often people can be so afraid to go. And that's what we hear from people who come to us. They were like, I was so nervous to go, so afraid. I was like putting off buying a ticket. And I'm so glad that I did. It's just expanded. And because people think, and it's about sex, or it's about this, or it's about that. It's not. We barely touch on the sexual piece. Like we barely, barely, barely go there, because that's not what our school is about. There are other spaces you can go, but our school is really about consciousness and connection, and energy. And I think the other thing just to share as well is, if you're not in London, get on the wait list, or it might be launched, maybe, who knows, by the time this comes out. But for the Academy, which is going to be our online school, where you can really experience that same liberation and go through all of the 12 fundamentals that we teach. I really think of it as like the masters of life. All of the things that we should have been taught and told about all of these different things, from boundaries to desires to play to love to sexuality to energy to intuition to surrender. Like all of these fundamentals, they will change your life. You will not even, you will not believe, like from where you are now to like a year of exploring these fundamentals, how your life will shift and change, and how much more liberated and free you will feel, and how that will impact everything that you do. It's so simple. That's what I want to say, is it's like so simple. It's so simple. It's so simple. The practices are so simple. And so that's my gift that I really want to bring to people, is like really show people how easy it is to change their lives, and live a life of bliss and freedom and liberation. Yeah. Thanks, Quinn.
So much love. Love to everyone. Thank you,
So much
Rosa.
love. Pleasure. Yay.
Thanks for listening to Learning How to Live. If this sparked something for you, share it, subscribe, and remember, you don't have to escape your life. You can build one worth staying for.